My son-in-law's family treated me like I didn't belong at their table. On the drive to their estate in Oakville, I pulled over to help an elderly man whose truck had stalled on the QEW. I arrived late and covered in grease. They made sure I knew it. What happened when that man walked through their front door an hour later changed everything. The Tim Hortons cup had gone cold beside my recliner. Saturday mornings in my house have a particular feel since Eleanor passed. The kind of quiet that settles into the furniture, into the walls, into the space where another person used to be. 3 years of that quiet, and I'd stopped fighting it. I folded the hockey section of the Globe and Mail back into itself and set it where she used to sit. The phone rang at 10:30. Not a text, not an email, an actual call, which meant it was either my daughter or something had gone wrong. It was neither, exactly. "Dad." My son-in-law's voice carried the warmth of a February morning in Sudbury. "It's Preston." I straightened in my chair. Preston never called me directly. Communication between us ran through my daughter Maura like water finding the lowest path. When he called, something had shifted. Maura wanted me to reach out. His tone managed to make even that sound like a concession. "My mother's turning 70 this evening. We're having a gathering at the house. Maura thinks you should come." His mother. Vivian Ashworth. Vivian of the Rosedale Ashworths, as Preston's father Roland liked to remind anyone within earshot. I'd met her twice. Both times she'd looked at me the way people look at a crack in an otherwise fine piece of china. "What time?" I asked. 7. Dress is smart casual. It's a sit-down dinner. Smart casual. I looked down at my flannel shirt and the work trousers I'd pulled on that morning out of habit. 31 years as an electrician will do that to a man. You stop thinking about what you're wearing because the clothes are just going to get wrecked anyway. "I'll be there," I said. Preston hung up without saying goodbye. I held the phone and listened to the silence for a moment. Outside, a neighbor was salting his front walk. The scrape of the shovel steady and familiar. Vivian Ashworth's 70th birthday. I had nothing to wear, nothing to bring, and no particular desire to walk into a house full of Bay Street lawyers and their wives who would spend the evening calibrating exactly how much I wasn't one of them. But Maura would be there. She'd asked for me. That was enough. The drive to Square One took 20 minutes through the kind of Saturday traffic that makes you wonder where everyone is going in such a hurry. I found a parking spot near the bay and walked through the perfume department with my eyes half closed. A woman in her 50s materialized beside the gift displays. She had the look of someone who had helped 1,000 people buy presents for people they didn't quite know how to shop for. "Birthday gift," I said. "My son-in-law's mother. Turning 70. She didn't miss a beat. "What's your budget?" 70. $80. She walked me to a display of silk scarves and leather-bound journals. Nothing that would make a statement, nothing that would embarrass. I settled on a small silver picture frame. Good quality, not flashy. $65. She wrapped it in tissue paper and slid it into a bag with a ribbon handle. Walking back through the mall, I caught my reflection in a shop window. Clean shirt, decent jacket, gift bag in hand. A 63-year-old man trying to look like he belongs somewhere he'd never once been made to feel welcome. The drive to Oakville from Mississauga takes about 40 minutes in ordinary traffic. On a Saturday afternoon in March, with patches of black ice still holding on to the shoulders of the QEW, I gave myself an hour. I had time. Not a lot, but enough. The truck appeared about 20 minutes in, an older F-150, dark green, hazard lights blinking from the right shoulder near the Burloak exit. I eased off the gas automatically. 31 years of trade work rewires your instincts. When something mechanical fails, you stop. A man stood at the back of the truck, hands in the pockets of a Carhartt jacket, squinting at the rear tire. Somewhere north of 75, I guessed. White hair, the kind of posture that suggested a lifetime of physical work. He was watching the passing cars the way people do when they've already accepted that nobody is going to stop. I pulled in behind him. "Cold day to be stuck," I called out, stepping onto the gravel shoulder. He turned and looked at me without much expression. "Rear passenger blew about 10 minutes ago. CAA's got a 45-minute wait and my phone's nearly dead." I nodded. I'm Frank. I used to do a lot of fleet electrical work. I'm no tire specialist, but I can change a flat. You have a spare? He studied me for a moment, the way older men do when they're deciding whether to trust someone. Then something in him settled. Howard Beckett, he said, extending a hand. Spares under the bed. He paused. I'm not as fast with these things as I used to be. The hip. I understand that, I said. I'm not as fast as I used to be either, but we'll get it done. His spare was in decent shape, which was lucky. The jack was older and took some coaxing. I worked on my knees in the gravel while Howard stood nearby, and we talked the way strangers talk when they've been thrown together by circumstances. Slowly, without pressure, the way a conversation should go. He'd retired from something in finance, he mentioned. Before that, engineering. Built things, he said, which I respected. He'd lost his wife 4 years ago. His daughter lived in Calgary. He was on his way to an event in Oakville, something he'd been dreading for reasons he didn't go into. I know that feeling, I said. I'm headed to something I've been dreading since the phone rang this morning. He smiled at that, first honest thing anyone said to me all day. The tire took about 50 minutes. My knees made their opinions known. My good jacket collected a streak of road grime along the left sleeve from where I'd braced against the truck, and my hands were dark with it by the time I lowered the jack and stood up. Howard reached for his wallet. I put my hand up. Don't, I said. I've been in worse spots than a flat tire, and been grateful someone stopped. This is just paying it forward. He looked at me for a long moment. You sure? I'm sure. He wrote down my number anyway, saying he'd like to return the favor someday. I thought that was something people said and didn't mean, but I wrote his down too because it felt rude not to. I watched him pull back into traffic, then sat in my truck for a minute looking at my jacket sleeve. I did my best with a rag from the back seat, but the damage was done. I was 40 minutes behind schedule, there was grease under my fingernails that wasn't coming out without a proper scrub, and my left knee was complaining about the gravel. I pulled out my phone and texted Moore. Running late. Had to stop and help someone. Be there by 7:30 at the latest, sorry, sweetheart. She replied in seconds. Please hurry. You know how they are about punctuality. I did know. I'd been learning how they were about things for 4 years. The Ashworth house sat at the end of a private lane in the kind of Oakville neighborhood where the lots are large enough to suggest that privacy is something you pay considerable money to maintain. Stone pillars at the driveway entrance. Professional landscaping, even in March, the kind of landscaping that doesn't happen by accident. Vehicles lined the circular drive, a Lexus, 2 Audis, a Range Rover, and a black BMW with a Rosedale parking sticker on the dash. My truck looked like it had taken a wrong turn. I parked at the end of the line and sat there for a moment. The gift bag sat beside me on the seat, the ribbon handle wilted from the afternoon heat of the car. My reflection in the rearview mirror told me what I already knew. The jacket sleeve had a grease mark that was visible in good light. My hands, despite the rag, were not what you'd call clean. I got out anyway. Maura had asked me to come. The front door opened before I could ring the bell. A catering staff member in a white shirt took one look at me and managed to keep her expression professional as she showed me inside. The foyer was marble tile, a chandelier that probably cost more than my first house, artwork on the walls that I couldn't evaluate, but understood was expensive. The sound of conversation and glassware drifted from the main room. Vivian Ashworth appeared from the hall before I could find my footing in the space. She was 70 years old and looked it in the way that elegant women look their age, not diminished by it, but framed by it. Silver hair, a dove-gray dress, reading glasses pushed up on her head like a headband. She took one look at me, and her face did something complicated and fast. Frank. Her voice contained the temperature of a walk-in refrigerator. You've made it. Happy birthday, Vivian. I offered the gift bag. I'm sorry I'm late. There was someone on the QEW with a flat tire. She accepted the bag at arm's length. Preston. Her son appeared from the living room, wine glass in hand, every hair in place. His eyes moved over my jacket sleeve. He had the grace not to comment immediately. We were beginning to wonder, he said. There was car trouble on the way, I said. Someone needed a hand. I see. From somewhere behind him, Maura emerged. She was wearing a navy dress and an expression that was trying very hard to hold two things at once: relief at seeing me and apprehension about what came next. She crossed the foyer and hugged me, which I could see made Preston shift his weight. "Dad, you okay?" "Fine, sweetheart. Sorry about the jacket." Roland Ashworth arrived in the doorway of the living room. He was built like a former rugby player who'd spent the last 30 years behind a desk. Broad-shouldered, well-fed, the kind of face that assumed authority automatically. He looked at me, at my jacket, at the grease on my hands, and then at Vivienne. "Is that—" he started. "He had some car trouble on the way," Vivienne said smoothly, which was generous of her given what was about to follow. "Car trouble." Roland's expression settled into something flat and decided. "You mean you had car trouble, or you were playing grease monkey on the side of the highway?" "I helped someone who was stuck," I said. "Their tire blew." He looked at his assembled guests, 8 or 10 people in well-cut clothes who had paused their conversations with the particular alertness of people who can tell something interesting is happening. He looked back at me. "Mora," Roland said pleasantly, "I wonder if your father would be more comfortable cleaning up before he joins us for dinner." "He's fine," Mora said, and I could hear the thinness in her voice. "He helped someone, Roland. He's a bit late, and his jacket got—" "It's not the jacket," Roland said. His tone had dropped to something quieter now, which was somehow worse. "It's the standard. We're sitting down to a formal dinner. Vivienne's 70th. Not a hockey night in someone's garage." The room had gone still in the way rooms go still when the temperature drops. "I'm happy to wash my hands," I offered. "That's not what I'm suggesting," Roland said. He set his glass on a side table with deliberate care. "I'm suggesting that perhaps you might be more comfortable coming back another time. When you're—" "Dad," Mara said sharply, "please." "When you're appropriately dressed for the occasion," he finished, as if she hadn't spoken. "There's a standard here. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to maintain at my wife's birthday celebration." The word standard landed the way those words always land. Precise, intended, shaped to remind you of your place without leaving fingerprints. I thought about what I was going to say. I'd spent 4 years thinking about what I was going to say in moments like this, and usually deciding that silence was better for Mora's sake. She was building a life with these people. It wasn't my job to burn it down. "You know what?" I said. "You're right. Your house, your standards. I understand." I turned to Mara. "I'm going to head out, sweetheart. Happy birthday to your mother-in-law." I meant that. "Dad, please don't. You deserve to enjoy the evening." I kissed her forehead. "You shouldn't have to manage this. That's not fair to you." I walked back toward the foyer. Behind me I heard Preston's murmur, Roland saying something about unfortunate circumstances, Vivienne's footsteps following me part way across the marble. I had my hand on the front door handle when the bell chimed. Through the sidelights, I could see a figure at the end of the stone path. Upright posture. Carhartt jacket. White hair catching the floodlights of the front garden. My hand stayed on the door handle for a moment. I opened it. Howard Beckett stood on the step. He was wearing a tie now and his jacket was clean, and he was looking at me with the expression of a man who understood exactly what he was seeing. "Well," he said, "of all the driveways in Ontario—" "You said you were coming to something in Oakville," I said. He looked over my shoulder into the foray, then back at me. His expression shifted to something quiet and deliberate. "You're leaving?" "Was about to." He tilted his head slightly. "Because of how you look." "Something like that?" I said. Howard Beckett stepped inside without waiting to be invited, which told me something about how often he'd needed an invitation in his life. Vivienne had come up behind me. "Howard." Her voice had changed entirely. Whatever had been in it when she spoke to me was gone, replaced by something genuine and warm. "You made it. We were worried." "My tire gave out on the QEW," he said. He looked at me steadily. "Frank changed it for me. 50 minutes on his knees in the gravel so I could make it to your dinner. Wouldn't take a dime for it." The foyer had the quality of a room in which everyone has stopped breathing. Roland appeared from the hall. "Howard, good, good, you're here." He extended his hand with the practiced ease of a man who spent his life making entrances. "We were starting to wonder if—" "This is Frank," Howard said. He interrupted Roland so naturally it took a moment to register. "He helped me on the highway tonight. I'd like him to stay for dinner. Roland's hand dropped slowly. His expression worked through several phases. Of course. He's already here for... He was leaving, Howard said. Why was he leaving, Roland? The silence in the foyer had a texture to it now. There was a question about a tire, Vivian said carefully. A tire. Howard looked at my jacket sleeve. The grease mark from the wheel well of his truck. He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at Roland. I've known you for 23 years, he said. I've watched you build a very successful business. You've got good instincts for numbers, and you're a decent host. But I've never once seen you work with your hands. So let me explain something to you. That mark on his jacket is from the underside of my rear axle. It's there because he got down in the gravel on a cold night on the QEW and changed my tire while I stood there because my hip won't let me do it anymore. And you told him to leave because of it. Roland was very still. You told him to leave, Howard repeated. That's what you did. Maura had come out of the living room. Her face was unreadable, which I'd learned meant she was feeling too many things at once. Howard, Roland started. I'm not angry, Howard said, and his voice carried the particular weight of someone who actually wasn't. I'm telling you a fact, Roland. This man helped me tonight. He helped me the same way he helps anyone who needs it, without being asked and without expecting anything back. And you looked at the result of that and decided it was a problem. He turned to Vivian. Happy birthday. He held out a small wrapped box he'd been carrying. 70 is not nothing. Vivian accepted it with both hands. Her eyes were bright. Then he looked at me. You're staying for dinner, Frank. I looked at Roland. Roland looked like a man who was counting the cost of several things simultaneously. Of course, Roland said finally. Please, stay. I stayed. The dinner was not what I would call comfortable. The table was set with the kind of care that requires professional help. Linen, candles, crystal that caught the light from the chandelier above. 8 guests. The Ashworths, Maura and Preston, Howard and me, at the far end of the table in a jacket with a grease mark that everyone was working very hard not to look at. The conversation moved around topics that belonged to the people at the table. Property values in South Oakville, a golf club's wait list, someone's renovation project. Howard sat beside me and we talked about the QEW, about how the city had changed since we were young, about the particular satisfaction of work that you can see the result of when you stand back from it. At some point, Roland, with the controlled grace of a man performing a correction, turned the conversation toward me. Maura tells us you were in the trades. Electrical. 31 years, I said. He nodded slowly. Good honest work. I let that sit where he put it. Later, when the cake had been brought out and Vivian had blown out the candles to a chorus of happy birthday, Howard leaned toward me. You're not going to get an apology, he said quietly. Men like that don't apologize. They just adjust. I know, I said. Does it matter? I thought about it. I thought about Maura, who was laughing at something Preston had said and who looked, for the moment, like she was okay. I thought about my truck in the driveway between the Otis, looking exactly like what it was. I thought about Eleanor, who would have found something to say to Vivian within the first 5 minutes and had it and her figured out by dessert. Not as much as I thought it would, I said. Howard nodded. That's usually how it goes. He gave me a card before he left, his personal number written on the back, in the deliberate print of someone who'd learned to write legibly for important documents. My daughter says I need to get out more, he said. I told her I do get out. I just seem to get stuck a lot. I laughed, genuinely the first time all evening. Call me if you need a hand, I said. He looked at me in the way of a man confirming something he'd already decided. Count on it. Maura walked me to my truck. The night was cold, the stars doing their best through the light pollution off the lake. She put her arm through mine, and we walked slowly, neither of us in a hurry. I'm sorry about Roland, she said. You don't need to apologize for him, sweetheart. I know. I still am. I unlocked the truck, and she held the door while I got in. She looked like she was working up to something. You're the best person I know, she said. I need you to know that I know that. I know you do. I mean, she stopped. I just need to know that you're okay. I thought of Howard at the highway shoulder, watching the cars go by, waiting for something. I thought of the particular satisfaction of a lug nut torqued down right, the way a job done properly in bad conditions has a quality that a job done comfortably in good ones never quite matches. "I'm okay," I said. "I'm better than okay. I had an interesting afternoon." She smiled. "Only you could turn changing a tire in a ditch into something interesting." "It wasn't a ditch. It was a shoulder." She kissed my cheek. "I love you, Dad." I drove home on the QEW, through the same stretch where I'd pulled over that afternoon. The shoulder was empty now, just orange safety lights, and the white lines of the guardrail cutting through the dark. The radio played something I didn't recognize, and I didn't change it. Howard Beckett texted before I got home. His message said, "Vivian just told me she thought your gift was the most thoughtful thing she received. Silver picture frame," she said. "Classic choice." I sat in my driveway for a moment, reading that. I texted back, "Glad it landed well. Safe drive home." He replied, "Some roads are worth the trouble." I thought about that as I went inside, turned on the kitchen light, put the kettle on. Eleanor's chair was where it always was. The apartment was quiet the way it gets late on a winter night when the city is finally settled down. But for the first time in a while, the quiet didn't feel like absence. It felt like room. Room for what might still come. I keep thinking about Howard standing on that front step in his clean jacket and his tie, looking at me with those steady eyes and saying, "You're staying for dinner, Frank." Not asking, just saying it, the way a man says something when he's already made up his mind and the only question is whether the world is going to cooperate. I didn't do anything that night expecting a reward. I pulled over because there was a man on the side of the highway and he needed help, and I had the tools and the time and the knees for it. Barely, but enough. That's the whole of it. I've been stopping for people in trouble since I was 22 years old, and a stranger on the 401 changed my alternator in a snowstorm without asking for a dime. You carry that kind of thing forward because there's no other honest way to carry it. What I've come to understand, though, is that how you behave when nobody's watching, when there's no audience, no reward, no reason to be decent, except that decency is the right thing. That's not just a character test. It's a kind of intelligence. Roland Ashworth is a smart man by most measures. He built something real. He understands numbers. He knows how to work a room. But he looked at a grease mark on a jacket and made a decision, and that decision told me everything about the limits of what he actually understood. He saw the surface and stopped there. That's a failure of judgment, not just manners. Howard saw differently. He spent a life reading people the way you read a balance sheet, looking for what's actually there, not what the presentation suggests. When he walked into that foyer and understood immediately what had happened, he didn't make a speech. He just said, "This man helped me. I'd like him to stay." Clear, direct, no performance. That kind of clarity only comes from years of knowing what matters and having the spine to say so out loud even when it's uncomfortable. And Maura, my daughter, caught between two worlds she didn't choose to be caught between. I've watched her navigate that particular difficulty for 4 years, and I've never once told her how hard it must be because I didn't want to make it harder. But when she walked me to my truck that night and said, "You're the best person I know," I thought, she already understands. Whatever she was raised to know about what kind of person to be, she carries it. That's not nothing. That's everything, actually. I drove home on the same stretch of highway where I'd knelt in the gravel a few hours before. The shoulder was empty. The night was ordinary. Nothing about it looked like the kind of evening that changes something in you. But some roads are worth the trouble. Howard said that, and I think he meant more than the QEW. What stays with me isn't a vindication. Roland adjusting his tone, the room going quiet when Howard spoke. That felt good in the moment, and then it passed, the way those things do. What stays is simpler. I did what I was raised to do. I got dirty. I was late. I almost left with my dignity intact, but my evening ruined. And then the night folded back on itself in a way I couldn't have arranged if I'd tried. You can't engineer that. You can only keep showing up, honestly, without calculation, with your hands ready to do what needs doing. The rest has a way of working itself out.